for a lot of families, there is so much stress around finances because they don't actually know. They've got things in all sorts of various places and they think they kind of know, but then inevitably something comes every month that stresses them out from a financial perspective, or that leads to tension or something, because they're not thinking, they're not planning ahead. They can't see clearly what is the road right in front of them. I've noticed that there's a fine line between being materialistic or a little bit obsessed about our money and being a good steward of our finances. My grandfather was this incredible example of nothing insane. He wasn't like a multi-millionaire, but he was a relatively successful local entrepreneur. But we always knew that it was family first. He was at every sporting function. He was at every family event. It was always family first. Grandma and Grandpa's house was heaven on earth because we always knew that there we were most important.
In any marriage, there's going to come across some stressful situations. Sometimes that stress is due to work pressures, and other times it's going to come to family pressures. And one of those pressures can be finance or money. And as the average family struggle to make ends meet, there needs to be a way to get out of that issue, and you have to have a plan. My guest today has developed a roadmap for how families can do just that and create a legacy that is more than piles of money, without sacrificing what is most important. And I'm sure you're going to guess what that is. Now, before we get into everything, I just want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay up to date on the latest content while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I just want to say I'm truly grateful. So let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Is money an issue in your marriage? And is it something you struggle to talk about and deal with? Let's face it, for many households, money causes immense amount of stress. So how do we go about creating an environment where couples can talk about money and create meaningful, lasting financial change? So let's be clear here. Money won't solve the problem. The goal here is to get to a point where money isn't the problem. So allow me to introduce my guest. Rob Cook is a CPA and a CFP and a former financial advisor who's on a mission to bring world-class financial expertise to everyone for a fraction of the traditional cost. By day, he's a shareholder of a fintech company called Elements, and by night, he uses the technology to answer the financial questions of his clients and help them make wise financial decisions. Rob is above all a husband and a father, and his priorities are faith, family, and finances. And you got to like the order he's got those in, right? He loves to compete in obstacle course races, volunteer at his church, learn something new, interesting, and even enjoy movie nights with his family. Man, I love movies. Maybe we'll get into some of those today. Welcome to the show, Rob. How are things?
Things are good. Thanks for that introduction. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. I'm really looking forward to having you on the call today. And I just really like the idea of being able to how you're framing your work as this contenders wanted. And so before we get started on really diving into the meat and potatoes of our conversation today, we always talk about everyone being on their own hero's journey or their hero's quest. And as you know, what that means is that for some of us, we're going to be facing trials in our journeys. So tell us a little bit about the trials that you faced, how that shaped you, any mentors that maybe you've come across in your path, and how all of that has led you to who you are today and the work that you're doing.
Wow. I remember when I was listening to one of these episodes before this and hearing that question, I thought, how in the world could I answer that in just like 2 minutes, right? I think as a student of history and mythology myself, I love the idea of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
But in all reality, I think we're always on a bit of our own hero's journey, right? It's never complete. It's just one obstacle or opportunity after another, frankly. And so when you ask, like, what are some of the trials or the hero's journeys that me and my wife and my family have been on? Well, I mean, It could be everything from, my wife and I struggled with infertility for many years, and that has been one heck of a journey, right? Not to mention the financial burden that comes with dealing with all of that, right? And then the emotional and like mental burden that comes with that is the bigger issue, I would say. Then there's heroes' journeys of, for me, I am a CPA and a CFP, but now I work in a fintech company. I've made a lot of different career changes. So you could talk about the ups and downs of that. There's a song called Better Days that I will often sing to my wife. And then one of the very first lines, it's talking about, for 7 years running, you've been a soldier. And I like jokingly tell that to my wife because we've been married for about 8.5 years at this point. Like, babe, you've been a soldier. I really appreciate it. I hope it's not much longer, type of thing. Because, we all are always on a journey. We're always trying to grow, and life is full. There's a poem I memorized a while back. Life is full of challenges. It's full of ifs and buts. But the man who's smiling all the time must be completely nuts. To some extent, that's just kind of life, right? And so for me, there's all sorts of things that we could say in there. Mentors that have helped me along the way. I mean, as a kid, as it pertains to finances and life, and in a great example, it was my dad and it was my grandfather. Nice. My dad's dad passed away about 2 months before I was born, so I really only had one grandpa my whole life, and he took it upon himself to really try and be the role of a dual grandpa. And he was this. His dad died when he was a teenager, and he started a family business and took care of his mom and his sister until she got married. And he provided for his family. And his mom developed Alzheimer's when he was in his young 30s with a small family. He took her in and they took care of her. And my grandfather was this incredible example of nothing insane. He wasn't like a multi-millionaire, but he was a relatively successful local entrepreneur. But we always knew that it was family first. He was at every sporting function. He was at every family event. It was always family first. Grandma and Grandpa's house was heaven on earth because we always knew that there we were most important. And yet Grandpa had this successful business. He was making investments and things all the time. And as a kid, I didn't really know it, but I think he was giving my initial first lessons in investing. He would talk to me about money as if I understood when I was 15 and 16 years old, working on his property with him. And he'd get this twinkle in his eye when he'd tell me about this cool deal that came his way. And I was always like, wait, did I understand that right? Type of thing. And it sparked this passion and love for all things money and finance and investing. And then I could talk about, mentors at various jobs and opportunities that came along the way, but he was the first. He's probably been one of the most impactful.
Man, Rob, you just nailed it out of the park with that answer. And the reason why I asked that question, and especially as an opening question, is because it really challenged us to think back to those times, like you're saying, like, as a child, you didn't see the wisdom in what was happening. And today, when you think back and you think about those conversations with your grandfather, and the moments, like I know about family first. And when you said that, I just think back of my preteen years when my grandfather still had the farm. And while my dad worked in a potash mine, every weekend, Friday evening, he'd get home from work. We were out at the farm, and we were there basically Friday till Sunday night. Every weekend, there was always something to do. And my dad is a mechanic, and so there was always something broken down on the farm. And so he's working on that, or we're hauling bales or whatever it is that we're doing. And it just warms my heart. And when we can take the time to really reflect and think about those learning experiences, and how that is brought forward today. And then, to hear about the, like, why is my grandfather talking to me about some business deal or some investment thing that he's doing, but he's trying to impart lessons for you, and for you to remember it today, it just goes to show the legacy that we can leave for ourselves and our families as well.
Like I'll never forget. I remember the spot. My grandfather was the first person to ever say to me the phrase, we're very faith-based in our family, hence faith, family, and finances in that order, right? He said, Rob, the Lord helps those who help themselves. And the Lord doesn't fix stupid. I remember he saying that to me. I remember sitting like, wait, why did you just say that to me? Like, I don't even remember the context, but I remember that for some reason so clearly. And so, it's those types of lessons, those little gems that we get that bless us later.
Awesome. That's outstanding. So let's get into some of this stuff, some other stuff here. So what do we need to look out for when it comes to going after our financial goals? Like, especially as younger couples and we're getting together, what are some things we should be paying attention about making those plans for those financial goals?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of different things that immediately we should be thinking about. I think number one is you just got to know where you're actually at. I think for a lot of couples, for a lot of families, there is so much stress around finances because they don't actually know. They've got things in all sorts of various places and they think they kind of know, but then inevitably something comes every month that stresses them out from a financial perspective, or that leads to tension or something, because they're not thinking, they're not planning ahead. They can't see clearly what is the road right in front of them. And I mean, honestly, that's a hard thing to do. And especially in a complex electronic world, there's all sorts of tools and all sorts of places where you can have information and money and things going on. And there's 1,001 questions. I mean, that's part of the reason why I try to do what I do on a daily basis. But the first step to being able to make any sort of progress forward is to be able to see clearly where we are today. Because if we can't see clearly today, then how do we know which direction to go to reach our goals eventually? What is the next right step, right? So for most couples, I'd say the first step is just know where you're at. A lot of times that means just understand where your cash flow is actually going. If you read the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, great book if no one's read it, but it's a fantastic book. And one of the chapters, he talks about this idea that all of their coins, because it's Babylon and ancient Babylon, all of your coins is a little soldier. And your job is to be the general over those soldiers and know where your soldiers are on the battlefield and what they're doing for you at any point in time. And most families have no idea where the soldiers are in the family. They might know where about half of them are, but where's the other half? And that leads to a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of issues. So that's the first thing I would say, for sure. I've got others if you want, I can keep going, but
for sure,
definitely that's the very first one. Another one that I would say is I see a lot of young couples who they have shiny object syndrome. And so they get really excited about one particular thing because this is what other people are doing. Oh, crypto's amazing. Okay, it might be, but have you thought about it, whether that makes sense for you and for your family and for your own, what's the word I'm looking for here? Your own disposition, we could say, towards investing, your own wants and desires and long-term goals. Maybe crypto is great, but it's not going to make sense for you. Like part of what I do with my clients is I have this whole multi-question quiz type of process that I run everyone through. And it's like, okay, because I've been incredibly fortunate. I worked in the highest levels of public accounting, in wealth management, and have met hundreds of people also because of my own podcast and various things that have come from all sorts of various backgrounds. And so I've been able to synthesize like, okay, what are some of the common characteristics and common paths and the common dispositions or attributes that these individuals carry in these various paths to kind of help us figure out what's likely the best path for these people. Because when you're starting off at the beginning of your journey, yes, you got to, number one, know where all the little soldiers are, but then number two, you got to make sure that you're going down a path that you actually want to go down, not just whatever the next shiny object is. Is it real estate? Great. Is it flipping? Maybe not. Maybe instead it's a long-term rental, or maybe it's short-term rentals, or maybe it's you got to wait until you're an accredited investor and you could do more syndication type things. Or, I don't even like real estate. I don't even want to have to deal with toilets, tenants, and trash. Okay, I'm going to be an invest in the stock markets kind of guy. Am I going to be your typical 401k, W-2 employee, or am I going to be a guy that's, looking at options type things? Or am I going to be a value investor kind of like Warren Buffett and try and do my thing kind of on the side, or I'm going to go and start a business. That's a different way to create wealth. And that's a completely different skill set and a completely different approach. And each of those paths has different stresses and different impacts on your family. You can create wealth in all those ways, but let's find the way that makes sense for your family and your long-term goals.
Just love those 2 points. That is just outstanding, Rob. For sure, where at least knowing what the starting point is and where you're at in life is that makes the most sense to me. And then the next piece to ask the question, is that really the path I want to go on? Whatever it is, their decision, it makes a lot of sense as well. Because sometimes, and I was bad for that. We were saying, options and all these different things. Like I bet you I've researched them all, And remember,
we all do to some extent. We all have that shiny object syndrome to some extent, right?
Oh yeah, I remember getting a test trading account and thought I would teach myself how to trade options with with a Thinkorswim platform, and
Yep.
And let me tell you, you know, that that $100,000 test account, I didn't see it grow in a
paper
year.
trading.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Suddenly became 25K or something maybe the next year.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. It's never as easy as the all the pundits make it sound. So,
Of
but it's
course.
so true. We spend time, and I wasn't on it necessarily every day, but it was a year worth of learning to find out that this is not really what I'm interested in. It's not what motivates me. So it's a great point that, you know, if we find things that really make sense for us as a family, then in that way we have support, because when the times will become tough, especially now, like we're working at building a business. Do I do men's work? You know, some days are more challenging than others, but I know I have the support of my wife to keep moving forward. I think that's so key that you bring those 2 points up.
Yeah. No,
so
it's
go right ahead.
Important. No, please go for it.
I was going to say, so you were in the financial services business. So why did you make the shift to doing what you're doing today? Was there you just looking for a different piece, or maybe I'm going to answer it for you. Maybe it was just a better synchronicity with the family.
Well, there is that to some extent, but honestly, like I wasn't really looking to leave. And I think sometimes that's when the best opportunities come, is when you're just working hard, doing your thing. Yeah. So now I left in part because I was frustrated, and I'll share some of those frustrations that I had that ultimately gave me the juice to make the jump. But it wasn't like, oh, this is the worst, I got to get out of here type thing. I want to preface with that. So when I joined the wealth management industry, when I moved out of public accounting and became a financial advisor, if you want to call it that, wealth advisor, however you want to call it, financial planner, I'm a CFP, I guess. I guess I am. But my point in saying all this is that when I came into the industry, I came in with this desire to help people create wealth. I realized early on that I loved, number one, helping people, and number two, I wanted to do something that I thought was going to make a difference in my life. And I quickly learned that the wealth management industry is honestly not there to help you make money. At best, it's there to help you protect what you have already created. At worst, they're there just to make a sale. And I was fortunate enough that I worked in a great firm with a lot of great people who were, trying to do right by their clients. And so they were mostly there to just protect their clients' wealth. But it was just paradoxically the opposite of what I was wanting to be able to do. And so as I was started off as what's called a paraplanner in the industry, effectively the number 2 guy in the chair, doing a lot of the planning, a lot of the detailed work, and then graduated to an actual advisor type role. But all the people that I was attracting to me in this advisor type role were individuals who were in that growth phase, who wanted to be able to make good decisions, who knew the value of good advice and didn't want to make a misstep now because they knew that could have long-term repercussions later. But unfortunately, my entire firm, and unfortunately most of the industry, is only set up to serve those who are in that 50, 55 plus type of range, who already have significant wealth or significant assets. And, it's by the way, hey, just give me your money to manage and I'll handle it and take care of it for you. And that's okay. There's a group of people that want that. But that wasn't the people that I was getting. Like, for example, I had an Apple employee, because my wife and I had lived in the Bay Area for a little while, an Apple employee who I'd networked with, who came to me, who's worth $12 million in his early 40s. And all of his net worth was tied up in Apple stock options and some real estate, basically, in an Apple 401k. And so there was none of that I could, quote, manage from my firm's perspective to actually be paid on. Right. But he wanted to pay me $12,000 a year to give him advice and to do planning with him. And I was like, yes, I will take $12,000 a year to provide you advice. Are you kidding me? That's fantastic. Yes, please. Let me just go confirm that with my firm that they're okay with that. You know what they said? Well, you know what? He has to give you $500,000 to be able to manage, or he has to pay you $5,000 for a one-time retirement plan that I already knew he didn't want. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is just backwards. Let's put it nicely. Yeah. Right. And so it was experiences like that I had over the course of a few years, that when my firm, my now company, Elements, approached me and they said, hey, we've got this tool that will enable advisors to profitably serve anyone at any level. Because that's the biggest issue. That's why a lot of firms establish this, like, oh, you got to have $500,000, because they cannot profitably serve a, quote, lower asset group because of their tools and the way their business is set up.
Yeah.
But with our company Elements, we're coming in and we're disrupting that. We're changing that. We're saying, no, you could actually serve anyone that you want profitably using our tool. And I now use it as a test case with my company Contenders Wanted, my little side business here, by helping people for only $20 a month, which is dirt freaking cheap in comparison to most of what you'd have to pay to get access to someone with my experience and background. But I can do it because of our tool. And so when I saw that, I thought that could change the world, because we can all of a sudden, financial services could go from only serving the top 1% to 3% of the entire world to now we could serve at least the upper quartile, probably the upper 50%.
Right.
And now we no longer have to have this financial epidemic that I believe is in our country, in our world, frankly. We could get great advice into the hands of more people earlier in their journeys to help them make better decisions to set up them and their families for less stress, more success, more of the life that they really actually want long term. And that is something worth doing. And so that's why I made the jump.
Nice. It's so nice. And really the perspective is just shifting and looking at that long-term investment, the lifetime value of that client is versus the big upfront fees. And I think that is so important. And the other piece I get out of there is that the shift from being in the other position to what you're doing today, like the feeling you must have today must be like head and shoulders above what you've ever had in your life.
Oh yeah. No, as much as I enjoyed what I did before, I love what we're doing now and how we're trying to help people.
So you kind of already touched on this one. Like you have this tool within your organization of Elements, but is that one of the resources you use and recommend most for yourself and others, or is there something else within that, or maybe even before, that helps people make that transition into wanting to do work with you folks? Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I said at the very beginning is you got to just understand where you're at.
Yeah.
Is because number one, it is vitally important and it is the first thing we ought to do. But our tool Elements, that's what it does really simply and really easily, is it pulls everything together to help us see it all together. And it basically helps you take your life and put it, instead of a bunch of fancy dials and a bunch of charts and graphical representations, it's a scorecard. What's your financial scorecard look like? Can we see the whole picture? Kind of like you might do with a stock, running like, hey, what's your PE ratio, or what's the EBITDA, or what's the Z-score, right? Or like, doctor, what's my blood pressure? What's my heart rate? What is my BMI, right? They're just scores designed to tell you something about that particular thing behind it. And we've done the same thing at Elements. It's a scorecard to help you understand where you actually at. So what I do is I actually give that away for free on the front end. I'll say, I'll do a free assessment. We'll sit down, help you see the picture.
Yeah.
And when we can all see the picture together as a professional, I can look and go, hey, by the way, let me point out some things that you might not see in this picture right in front of us. Here's 3 or 4 things. If you'd like, go and work on them yourself. If you want, you can be part of this program that I'm doing. I can be a resource for you. I can help you out. We can make it really easy. But that's effectively what we do, is we just use the tool to help us see clearly where we're actually at and then work together to take it from there.
Yeah, it's kind of like going to your doctor, right? And getting the full-on blood work, fit your annual physical, and getting the full list from everything from your blood work, you're saying your BMI, everything, getting that real test to find out, okay, where are the weaknesses in our current plan? Where we need to focus on some health issues and be able to better solidify ourselves. So that's a really cool place for it to start.
And instead of a hour-long doctor's visit, you could have a scorecard finished in 10 minutes. On average, it takes people, we have the data on the back end to show that 82% of people do it the very first time, and it takes them 8.4 minutes.
Jeez.
Which is insane,
yeah.
Right? Imagine if you could actually understand what was going on in your finances, kind of see the full picture in less than, let's just say 15 minutes to make it really generous.
Unreal.
Pretty incredible for a lot of people, actually.
Yeah. Now, you've been in your time here in the financial services business. You must have come across a lot of myths and challenges that people are faced. So help us dispel some of the myths about financial freedom and what passive income is all about. Any of those myths that you've come across? Oh yeah, I've got all sorts of ones. In fact, we've already hit on a couple of them. Like, number one is your financial advisor is not going to make you rich. I'm sorry.
hiring someone to do that for you, they're in the business of covering their butt. So they're not in the business of taking risks and really trying to grow things for you. Are they going to generally grow it over time? Yes, because the markets are generally going to go up over time, but they're not going to make you rich. It's the very first one. You asked about passive income. Another one of the myths that I see out there is like, is just passive income itself. Let's be real. All passive income, there's very few really, truly passive income sources out there. And for most people to get to something that is actually a passive income source, you got to do a heck of a lot of work to even get to that point. So it's never going to be just a plug and play passive income. I'm sorry. So let's just make work cool again, guys. Like one of the things I run into all the time is people just tell me what to do and it'll just take care of itself. Oh, I'm sorry. That's never the way anything has ever grown. Right. Talk about growing up on a farm as a kid, right? You could never just plant the seed in the ground and expect to harvest it a few months later. That's not the way life works.
Exactly.
And it's the same with your investments. There are some aspects about it that might be more passive than others, 100%.
Sure.
But it will always require some work. It will always require due diligence. It will always require you to stay on top of things and keep an eye on where those soldiers are at, right?
Yeah.
It will always require that.
Yeah.
So just accept that. And let's, to quote Alex Hormozi, one of my favorite entrepreneurs out there, let's make work cool again, because it's okay if we have to do a little bit of work. There's not a problem with that.
Absolutely. No, I love Alex's stuff too. I just came across him a couple of months ago. So he's quite the character. That
quite guy. The character. Yeah, for sure.
Right on. You must have learned from doing this work though. You must have learned about some struggles and failures that people are having in solving their money problems. Could you give us a couple of those and a sense of what are some issues that people are most challenged and faced with?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first one is just understanding where all the little soldiers are, right? That's one of the biggest challenges. It's just understanding that. The second one is knowing where to go, right? I think we kind of already talked about this to some extent, and the third one I want to add to this is that you don't recognize what your priorities are. There's a saying that I heard a friend talking about a little while back. And it's like, for a wise man, money should be in his head and not in his heart. And for a lot of people, you need to look and see what is in your heart there. Like what is actually the most important things for you? So for me, like I know my faith is first and my family is second. For others, it might be their health. For others, it might be their particular hobby. For others, it might be whatever. It's up to you. But when it comes to, this seems a little bit backwards almost, but when it comes to our finances and money and wealth creation, investments and all these things, the best outcomes come when we at least attempt to project to the future and aim at something. And the only way that you can do that is to look inside of yourself today and go, where do I want to be? What is most important to me? Like if you're going to start a business, you should never start a business without asking yourself, what do I want this business to look like? Because you are likely to go build something that will become a trap to you and not something that brings you joy and happiness. You should ask yourself, is this investment going to put me where I want to be with my family one day? Yeah, crypto might be great. It might make you a bunch of money, but is it going to lead to maybe all sorts of stress as it goes crazy up and down, and with the bankruptcies like FTX, this last month, whatever it might be? Always begin with the end in mind. And that requires that you do the introspection on the front end to figure out what is most important to me. What is the life that I want? What is the outcome that I'm actually looking for?
Go ahead.
If you don't do that work, you are always going to be running into issues. You're always going to be bumping into stresses and feeling like you're not in the right place, or you're not in your groove, because you're not. You haven't done the personal work to figure that out first, to then inform all the decisions today.
100%. And it goes back to some earlier points, right? It's about really having that plan ahead of time and not chasing the shiny ball from the one thing to the next thing to the next thing, because we really don't have a plan. And I think for people and dealing with money, I'm not sure the average individual really has the desire to dive into it, but it's no different than anything else in life, whether it's a career choice where you need to learn about how to do it. But if we thought of it as that, and we thought that how and recognize the importance of it, like I'm in my mid 50s today, And as I look at where I'm at today financially, I probably should have paid a little bit of closer attention, learned a few things 25 years ago. But it is what it is. And so today it's about passing on that information, that knowledge, which is why I'm doing these types of podcasts and helping other listeners, other younger men have an understanding that time, while you have time on your side today, time is so fast, goes by so fast. And the compounding effect of that in terms of how you choose to retire, how you choose to live later on in life, when you finally come to that point where you want to decide, you know what, that's it, I'm packing it up. I've set my family and myself up to a position where we can enjoy life and not have to worry about one part of it, which would be the financial side. And I think really what you're telling us today is that it's really about investing in some education, and your system sounds like an opportunity for folks to do that. And I think you're going to touch on way more than the 50% percentile. Like, you're covering the entire market, because who can't afford $20 to get involved? And we spend more than that. Some people spend more than that in Starbucks in a week, let alone in a month, right? So it makes so much sense. What would you then, we're talking about financial education. I'm just thinking, where would you suggest somebody would start then in growing and learning about this, getting this financial education? Is that something that you guys do at Elements, or is there somewhere else that you would suggest that people get started, at least to get an understanding and a handle on things?
Yeah. So what I actually do, so we don't do this at Elements, because Elements is just the software company. Right. Through Contenders Wanted, my little personal company and brand there, I mentioned that quiz earlier that I take people through. Yeah. So what I do is I take them through that little quiz to help them figure out, okay, what's likely the best path for you? And then I've gone and done a bunch of research, because there are so many resources out there. You want to watch YouTube videos? I'm sure there's 1,001 YouTube videos on any particular way in which to create wealth or to handle your finances or whatever it might be. Prefer podcasts? Great. Clearly you're a podcast listener, so maybe go find a podcast that does that. You prefer a course? Go and do that. It doesn't matter. But I've done, I figured out there was about 25 different ways in which you could go out and kind of start to create wealth. And I did research to figure out what are likely the good books, courses, podcasts, YouTube channels, and influencers that you should go check out to learn that particular thing. And so you ask, like, what would I recommend? Well, it really depends on doing that work first to figure out what's the right path. Once you have the right path, then ask yourself, what way do I like to learn? Because this is a long game. This is not a get rich quick in the next couple of months. This is a lifetime journey. So to thine own self be true. Figure out what way you like to learn best, and then find there. I'm sure there is a way to learn it in that medium, and we'll help you find it, type of thing. So that's what I usually recommend, is do the work first to figure out what's the right path. And then second, figure out what way do I like to consume it, and then just go there. I'm sure there's an option there. If not, shoot me an email. I'll help you find something.
Yeah, right on. So I'm glad you mentioned your own site, your own business there, the Contenders Wanted. So let's expand on that a little bit more. So what kind of services do you provide there, and how is it that you connect with folks?
Yeah. So the short answer is that $20 a month service, that's what I do through Contenders Wanted, is that kind of like ongoing, I call it like the inner circle, the Contenders inner circle. Come and learn together, use the software, know where you're at. Let's make a plan together, type of thing. Other services for those that are really in need to kind of get a handle on everything. You and your spouse need to sit down. We really need to do a deep dive, really figure out where are all the soldiers. I got a 3-month intensive boot camp that I do, but honestly, I don't push it that much. But for those who really want that, it's there as an option, frankly. But the majority of the time, it's just, I'm trying to educate people, help them better understand where they're at. Just see the picture clearly so they can make a good decision moving forward. I'm actually only on LinkedIn. I hate social media. And I feel like if I'm on 1,000 different social media apps, I mean, it's a dilution, number one effect in terms of the effort. And number two, it's a waste of my time. My family comes first. So I spend more time with them. So if you go on LinkedIn, you could find me there, and I post videos of like, hey, if you got the Elements app, if you got the scorecard here, check this out. This is how you figure out this question. This is how you get this answer. This is how you figure this thing out. So I do all sorts of educational type stuff in that regard. Right on social.
Love it. Very awesome. That's pretty, that's a great way for them to get connected to you. So of everything that we spoke about today, and maybe I haven't touched on a topic yet, but what would be the one takeaway you'd want our listeners to have from our conversation?
Yeah. So I briefly mention this. This is actually something that, honestly, it's only in the last year that I've really started to kind of think about this and ponder it. I actually posted about it on LinkedIn today. But I've noticed that there's a fine line between being materialistic or a little bit obsessed about our money and being a good steward of our finances. Because like you said at the very beginning, one of the things I like to say is we don't want money to be the focus of our lives. We just don't want it to be the problem,
Right.
the thing that's holding us back, right? It's going to be there, but how do we balance that? And a lot of times it comes down to our motivations and our intentions and where's our heart at, frankly.
Yeah.
I think it's Matthew 11, for where your heart is, there will your treasure be also, right? Like, where's your treasure? Like, money, quote Zig Ziglar, money's not the most important thing, but it's up there with air. It's kind of important for our lives. Like everything that we do transactional is money. So we gotta deal with it.
Yeah.
But we got to keep it in its right place. That's why it's so important to think in terms of the long term. What is the life we're trying to actually create? Because if we don't, we're just constantly chasing a dollar, constantly chasing a financial goal that once we reach it, we realize there's someone else that's ahead of us or just on the horizon. Now that goal has changed and we're never going to feel like there's enough. We're never going to feel like we've actually, quote, arrived.
Yeah.
If we don't have some sort of intention about where we're trying to go and trying to keep it in its rightful place.
Well, I love that, brother. That's awesome. Just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today, Rob. We really have been able to lay a bit of a groundwork here for couples and families so they can find their way and not have to deal with money problems in their homes. And you already talked a little bit about giving an idea to find you on LinkedIn, but where else would they get involved with your work and be able to get a chance to reach out to you?
Yeah, well, if you ever want to do that free assessment like I talked about, you can just go to contenderswanted.com/free. And I'm happy to do a complimentary 30-minute session with anybody who wants to. You get the app for free for about a month. And we can sit down. I'll give you, hands-free bonus little just, hey, this is what I think. Here's the assessment. Want to work together? Great. If not, that's okay. I'm here to just help people.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure that information's in the show notes as well as your LinkedIn contact info. I really want to say once again, thank you so much for being on the show today. And you're doing some great work out there, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing for couples.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the great work that you're doing for men. I think there's honestly, it's one of the hardest parts of being a man is that we're just doing our job, just trying to work hard every day and provide for our families. And we need a community of good men that are trying to do good and do well.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.